In 2005, after an 8-year absence, Batman returned to the big screen in a brand new cinematic universe with Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins. Now Batman was darker and moodier than ever, where we go on a journey with young Bruce Wayne played by Christian Bale as he searches the world for purpose after the murder of his parents, where he trains with the deadly and dangerous League of Shadows. Upon returning to Gotham City, he becomes billionaire playboy Bruce Wayne by day, and by night he becomes the Batman, a terrifying vigilante who hunts down dangerous criminals. Where his past comes to haunt him, with his former mentor turned enemy Ra's al Ghul played by Liam Neeson, who shows up to destroy Gotham City. Batman must save the city from descending into total madness and chaos in this fun and exciting Batman thriller, which rejuvenated the franchise and breathed some much needed new life into it. So, seeing how we're living in a day and age where Batman is rebooted every 5 minutes, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, let's look into one of Batman's most successful reboots, Batman Begins. So let's all get sore throats while impersonating Christopher Nolan's Batman voice as we check it out. Number 10. A fresh slate for Batman. After the release of Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin in 1997, the fourth Batman movie in the series, which started with Tim Burton's Batman in 1989, it was felt that changes needed to be made to the Batman cinematic franchise, as the movie was torn apart by both fans and critics alike, who felt that the series was going down a silly, campy direction, what with its Bat credit card and Mr. Freeze's endless ice puns. Schumacher had planned a fifth Batman movie in the original Batman film series, which was to either be called Batman Triumphant or Batman Unchained, and was to see Batman take on the Scarecrow and Harley Quinn, as well as a cameo by Jack Nicholson as the Joker in a hallucination scene, no doubt caused by the Scarecrow. This fifth Batman movie was scrapped, thanks to the as-mentioned Batman and Robin. However, Warner Brothers weren't sitting idly by with the Batman franchise, and were planning other Batman movies to reignite the Batman spark, to win over Bat fans who were left with a bad taste after Batman and Robin. Some of these ideas included making a Batman vs Superman movie, and a movie based on Batman Beyond, which would have seen a Batman of the future. And at one stage a Justice League movie was greenlit, which was to be directed by Mad Max director George Miller. Warner Brothers decided it was time to wipe the slate clean and to create a reboot, a new dawn for Batman, not attached to any other previous movie, where they decided to focus on Bruce Wayne's past and the story of him becoming Batman. Number 9. The reboot we nearly got. Warner Brothers at one point decided to base the Batman reboot on the 1987 Frank Miller comic Batman Year One, which focuses on a young Bruce Wayne becoming Batman. Requiem for a Dream director, Darren Aronofsky, was hired to direct the movie as well as write the script with Miller. And this Batman movie would have been an interesting one, as it was to see Bruce Wayne as a homeless youth living on the streets who goes around beating criminals, where he then gets the idea of becoming Batman. The Batcave wasn't under Wayne Manor, but it was hidden in a subway station. And Alfred wasn't a butler, but a car mechanic called Big Al. Freddie Prinze Jr. and Joaquin Phoenix were also being sought after to play Batman. However, Warner Brothers scrapped this movie as they didn't like the direction that it was going in. That, and they also didn't like the fact that the script was pretty violent, and would have no doubt given the movie an R rating. We need an R-rated Batman. Number 8. Batman Begins took inspiration from an old comic book and science fiction classic. Director Christopher Nolan was hired as the director of Batman Begins in 2003, thanks to his previous movies Memento and Insomnia, which proved that he was a dramatic director and storyteller with a unique visual style. David S. Goyer was hired to write the script with Nolan. Both Nolan and Goyer agreed that the movie should be an origin story, as Batman's origin had never been seen on screen before in live action. And it was also felt that Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul should be the villains, as they too hadn't yet appeared in live action before. Goya had previously written the Blade trilogy, and for Batman Begins, he took inspiration from a comic book story called The Man Who Falls, which featured in a 1989 comic called Secret Origins, which told the story of young Bruce Wayne falling down a small hole in the ground and then becoming terrorized by bats, causing his fear of bats, where after the murder of his parents, a tortured Bruce Wayne travels the world to find purpose in his life and learns martial arts, just as seen in the first act of Batman Begins. Nolan had his own ideas of Batman Begins. He took inspiration from the 1982 science fiction movie Blade Runner for its ability to be a fictional world that felt real and bleak and lived in. And in order to recapture this feel and mood in Batman Begins, Nolan invited the crew to a private screening of Blade Runner. Number 7. A new face behind the mask. So the most difficult task for the production was no doubt finding a new Batman for this new cinematic universe. There was lots of names being thrown around as to who could be the new Dark Knight. Some sources claim that the studio's number one choice was Ashton Kutcher. Yeah, a Batman that went around punking his enemies. Apparently Josh Hartnett was a popular choice for the role, and he met up with Nolan, but ultimately Hartnett wasn't interested. Other names thrown around include Jake Gyllenhaal, Henry Cavill, Heath Ledger, and Joshua Jackson. I can remember actually reading a magazine article at the time saying that they were trying to get Guy Pearce in the role, but who knows if that's true. There are other claims that he was nearly Ra's al Ghul. Actor Ian Bailey did a screen test as both Bruce Wayne and Batman, but he too didn't get the role, although he did have a unique Batman chin. Bottom line is, there was a lot of potential Batmans. The search was rounded down to 2 potential candidates, those being Welsh actor Christian Bale and Irish actor Cillian Murphy. Both actors took part in a screen test as Batman, where they wore Val Kilmer's Batsuit from Batman Forever. And yeah, it's really weird seeing these guys in the Batman Forever suit. I think Murphy did okay, even if the Batsuit was nearly swallowing him, but I think the most ideal out of the two was Bale. He just had the right intensity and look, and he generally felt like Batman, so he was cast. Nolan would further say, he has exactly the balance of darkness and light that we were looking for. And Bale proved that he had it in him to be an intense actor, thanks to his previous performances in American Psycho and The Machinist. Number 6. Other casting. The other characters seen in the movie were also important, as they too had to be believable. When it came to Alfred Pennyworth, Batman's trusty butler, Anthony Hopkins was offered the part, but he turned it down, so the role went to the legendary Michael Caine. Gary Oldman was the first choice to play Ra's al Ghul, but instead he took the role of Jim Gordon, when Chris Cooper turned that role down. Viggo Mortensen was also considered, but nothing happened. Liam Neeson was cast, as it was felt that he usually plays good guys in movies, mentor types, so it'll come as a shock when it's revealed that he's the villain. Cillian Murphy, who originally auditioned for Batman, was cast as Scarecrow, as Nolan was really intrigued by his eyes. After reading some old Batman comics, Murphy wanted to update the Scarecrow's look, feeling that the old Scarecrow looked too much like Wazzle Gummidge, which was an old British children's TV show. So that's how the Scarecrow ended up with his new, updated look in Batman Begins. In addition to that, the legendary Morgan Freeman was cast as Lucius Fox, Tom Wilkinson was cast as the Mafia boss Falcone, and Katie Holmes was cast as Bruce Wayne's love interest, Rachel Dawes, who was a character created purely for the movie. It was also considered to introduce the character of Harvey Dent in Batman Begins, but that idea was dropped. Instead, the character made his appearance in the sequel, The Dark Knight. And supposedly, when some of the cast got the script for Batman Begins to read, it was under the title of Intimidation Game, but this was done to prevent script leaks. Number 5. Filming. Most of Batman Begins filming took place in England, namely Shepperton Studios. The mansion used for Wayne Manor was Mentmore Towers, which was located in Buckinghamshire. Most of Gotham City's exteriors were filmed around Chicago, along with other locations including New York and London. Iceland was used for the scenes set in Bhutan, and a small village was built on the location, but filming there was very difficult due to bad weather and being located in the middle of nowhere. There was one very strange incident in particular that happened while filming on the streets of Chicago. a drunk driver crashed into the Batmobile, otherwise known as the Bat Tumbler, because when he saw the bizarre vehicle, he thought that it was some kind of alien spaceship, so he rammed into it in a panic, and he then quickly tried to flee the scene. Man, how's he going to explain that one to the wife? Oh, hi honey, how was your day? Oh, you know, the usual. I drank too much and then crashed into the Batmobile and freaked out because I thought it was aliens. You know, the usual. Number 4. Christian Bale's woes with playing Batman. Bale was starring in The Machinist when he was cast as Batman, and for that role he was drastically underweight. According to Bale, he was so weak he couldn't even do one push-up, so he had to bulk up for the part, where Bale was led by a personal trainer and trained in Wing Chun Kung Fu, where he managed to gain more weight, but supposedly a little too much. Despite gaining 100 pounds of muscle, his weight then went over 30 pounds, where he then had to do the opposite and lose more weight, where finally he achieved the required weight when filming had started. And then there's the Batsuit, or in Bale's case, the dreaded Batsuit. The suit made him feel claustrophobic. He couldn't hear in it, and could barely see anything, and he also didn't like that he couldn't turn his head. In his own words, it was hot, dark, and sweaty and gave him a headache. Another challenging scene for Bale was a scene where Alfred wakes up Bruce Wayne while he's in bed. Now this shouldn't be a difficult scene, but it was. Being a method actor, Bale actually fell asleep, and while filming that scene, Michael Caine couldn't wake him up, resulting to poking him in the ribs. But no, nothing. Bale was too busy having a snooze. In fact, Christian Bale was that much of a method actor, even during interviews for the movie and other promotional events, he maintained his American Bruce Wayne accent. Well, at least he wasn't doing the interviews with the Batman voice, or that would have been really weird. Say, Christian Bale, what can you tell us about the new Batman movie? It's good! Number 3. Batman on Thin Ice. So there's a scene early in the film where Liam Neeson's Ra's al Ghul is training Bruce Wayne, where they are sword fighting on a frozen lake. The scene is well choreographed and is beautifully shot, with great cinematography. However, shooting that scene could have been catastrophic, as while filming, the two actors could hear the ice cracking, only to discover the very next day that the ice on the lake had completely melted. So thankfully during the filming, the actors or the crew didn't fall through the ice, but damn, that was a close call. That wouldn't be the only ailment Christian Bale would suffer either, as he reportedly lost his voice for a while from doing his Batman voice. Yep, that infamous voice that everyone talks about came at a cost. About that voice does get a lot of flack, but I guess we've also got to kinda see it from Bale's perspective. He wanted to play Batman like a rage-filled monster. He didn't want to play the part camp like the 1960s TV show, or like the tortured soul from the previous quadrilogy, but rather an enraged beast. And I think he wanted his Batman voice to reflect that. However, I don't think he uses his growly, scratchy voice as much in Batman Begins. He also talks more with a slight whisper too. The Batman's scratchy voice growl would become more prominent in the following sequels. Number 2. Practical effects. Christopher Nolan didn't use second unit for Batman Begins, as he wanted the action in the movie to feel authentic, and to not rely on CGI effects. Most of the stunts were done for real, or were achieved by using miniatures. The Batcave itself didn't use any kind of green screen, as it was a full-scale set. The Batsuit itself was quite a marvel, as the suit, along with most of its gadgetry, was based on real military equipment, and the cape was made out of a real parachute fabric, which was designed by the British military. The Bat Tumbler was also a real functional vehicle that had been designed and built for the movie. 4 were built for Batman Begins to be precise. There is still CGI in Batman Begins, but it's used very sparingly. Most of the action scenes are done for real, involving real stunts and explosions. The craft of Batman Begins feels authentic. You're never taken out of the movie with fake CGI. I feel like most directors probably would have used the easier CGI technique, so it makes you really appreciate the craft of Christopher Nolan. Bonus entry: Bat Toys. So even though Batman Begins was a mature Batman movie which took an adult approach, it didn't stop the action figures from coming out, where kids could get their hands on their own Batman action figure and Batmobile, and create their own Batman adventures at home. The toys were released by Mattel, and the lineup wasn't as huge as some of the previous Batman movie-related action figures brought out by Kenner, but to be honest, these figures looked pretty good, with great detail. You could also get larger Batman figures if the normal standard size wasn't working for you. And here is my non-official bootleg Batman Begins action figure, where Batman now seems to be part of the Avengers. Just look at Batman's face. That is the face of an action figure that's ashamed to exist. Either that or Batman has just shat his bat pants. Man, just imagine if Batman looked like this in the movie. There was also a Batman Begins video game that was released on several systems, including PlayStation 2 and Xbox, where gamers get to play as Batman going on several missions throughout Gotham City in order to stop the League of Shadows. The graphics were pretty good, and Christian Bale and the rest of the cast even provided their voices for the game. However, the platform I played Batman Begins on was the Game Boy Advance, and man, I loved this game. As soon as I got it, I wouldn't stop playing it, for if anything, just because I was determined to beat the damn thing. And thankfully, after about a week or so of having the game, I had beaten it and was really happy. And then I was sad, because it was kind of all over. I had completed the game, and there was no more reason to play it. The challenge was done. Number 1. Batman Redeemed. So Batman Begins was released in June 2005, and I can actually remember the build-up to its release. A lot of people didn't know what exactly it was. Keep in mind that back then, the word reboot wasn't very common, and some people assumed that this was a prequel to the previous Batman movies. But no, when you watch Batman Begins, you can tell very quickly that this is an entirely new universe. A new dawn of Batman, and it seemed that people liked this new rendition of Batman, as it would go on to make over $373 million on its $150 million budget, making it the 9th highest grossing movie of 2005. It was even nominated for an Academy Award for Best Cinematography. The movie was praised by fans and critics alike, with positive highlights being focused on the performances, the directing, the script, and the cinematography. Finally, after several years hiatus, Batman was back, and he was at the peak of popularity once again, as well as being taken seriously. There was actually a lot of hype when Batman Begins came out. Now I know I'm not the only one to mention this, but people were actually hailing it as the best Batman movie ever. Now, I don't think that was the case. Maybe I'm biased, but to me, Batman '89 is the better movie of the two. Because although it has its flaws, it still has a certain panache and momentum about it. The Dark Knight, however, I think is a better candidate to go against Batman '89 as the best Batman movie. But I still think that Batman Begins is among one of the best Batman movies. I still think it's great, and I think one of the reasons it was loved and embraced so much is that it was a breath of fresh air to have a Batman movie taken seriously. A Batman movie taken with care and respect given to the character. You got to remember, before Batman Begins, everyone had a bad taste in their mouths after Batman and Robin, and probably thought that cinematically Batman was dead. But no, Batman Begins came along to prove that there is plenty of life left in the crime fighter. It's a beautifully made movie, with captivating cinematography, which tells an insightful story of Bruce Wayne becoming Batman. Finally, a new and exciting age of Batman had begun. Yeah, I love Batman Begins. Every time I watch it, I feel like I've been on an epic journey, like I've experienced the transition of Bruce Wayne being a lost youth to being one of the world's greatest crime fighters. And I think that is something that no other Batman movie has been. A rich storytelling journey. Anyway, I'm Minty, and if you're a director and you've got Christian Bale working on your movie, don't let him fall asleep on set, because it's apparently really difficult to wake him up. See ya!